You never know in your young life that a thing like this is going to happen to you. And although I always liked sports, I never thought that, you know, I'd be in a World Championship basketball team, you see. It was a wonderful period of my life. I don't think I'll ever forget it.
They were called Canada's Wonder Team. It seems hard to imagine nowadays, in this era of superstars and steroids, hard to believe that a women's team, and an amateur one at that, could jam arenas around the continent. But they were no ordinary team. For almost 2 decades, the Grads were the reigning queens of basketball, their record unparalleled in the history of sport. It was almost as if they didn't know how to lose, and people around the world loved them for it. The Grads met heads of state and movie stars, and they captured the hearts of a whole generation. They were the hottest ticket in town, and throughout the 1920s and 30s, they were the team to beat.
We know how to beat these people. We have beaten them before, and we will beat them again tonight. We have the size, we have the reach, we're stronger, we can wear them down. I'm getting tired of hearing how they win, and they win. Tonight, they lose.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear that, Jack?
School, you guys. Tonight.
It's time.
In their day, the Grads were a phenomenon, but it wasn't always that way. Only a few years earlier, their very existence would have been impossible. Over the centuries, most sporting events were simply off limits to women. An exclusive club for men only. Conventional wisdom had it that a woman was a delicate creature, and strenuous exercise was discouraged. A hard-fought game might make you sweat, or strain a muscle, or worse.
People used to say to us, oh, you know, you're playing sports at your age, you're just going to be crippled and so forth and so on. You'll never have children. And
it wasn't ladylike. You'd get hurt. You couldn't produce men children.
We didn't believe it then and don't believe it now because the female of the species is always tougher than the male anyway. So.
The stodgy Victorian era and its restrictions finally passed away, along with bustles and cinched waists. And with the advent of World War I, women had to assume a larger role than ever before. New worlds were opening up to them, including the world of sport. Women's teams were springing up across North America, in large metropolitan centers and in small cities like Edmonton, Alberta. Right out there on the edge of Canada's vast prairie, it was a place of optimism and pioneering spirit. Anything was possible. In 1915, a group of young women, just graduated from the commercial high school, unknowingly opened a new chapter in the history of women's sport. They loved to play basketball and wanted to keep on playing after graduation. So they spoke to their former teacher and coach, a young man named Percy Page, and convinced him to keep on coaching them. Although relatively new to the game, Page methodically applied himself to the challenge of trying to mold a top-notch basketball team. The team was named after their old school. They called themselves the Edmonton Commercial Graduates Basketball Club, the Grads for short. For the first few years, it was just a fun thing, and no one really took much notice. But a trip across Canada in 1922 changed all that. In that year, the Grads, still unknown, decided to offer a challenge for the Canadian Championship. They had little money to spend on the trip east to play against the defending champion London Shamrocks, and on a shoestring budget, the luxury of sleeping cars or even substitute players was out of the question. After the 3-day journey in coach seats, the weary Grads stepped off the train to meet the well-rested home team. But the Grads hadn't come all this way to lose. Their return home to Edmonton gave them their first taste of fame. The city had discovered a new sport, complete with its own set of heroes.
You know, they crowded that old arena, they couldn't accommodate them all. We became so popular after beating that team in the East, it just grabbed people. And then they were hanging from the rafters, actually on the rafters of the arena to watch.
The love affair, which began in 1922, was in full bloom by the mid-30s. And the more formidable the opponents, the more fervent the fans.
Listen to that crowd as the Grads enter the arena. Tulsa Stenos are already on the floor, along with their coach, Steve Beck, all waiting for the beginning of Game 5 of this international championship match. These two teams are no strangers to one another, having met in several previous.
The Grads' first taste of international competition came in 1923, when they offered a challenge to the Cleveland Favorite Knits, who claimed to be world champions. The Favorite Knits were America's top team, and their uniforms, by the standards of the day, were positively modern.
Oh, they were smart. They had real short shorts on, and they had world champs on their pants, which we determined to take off. And they had sleeveless sweaters, really smart. And we were all clothed in pads on our knees and heavier socks and bloomers and this sort of thing, and really all covered, you know, very sedate.
Edmonton won the series with ease. The Grads may have taught the Cleveland team a lesson in basketball, but the Favorite Knits taught the Grads a lesson in fashion. Their cumbersome bloomers of heavy wool serge gave way to more modern uniforms. Modesty had been thrown to the wind.
The night that we first appeared in these things, we had to push Connie Smith out on the floor. She wouldn't go.
She's shy.
As we are, after all, a bunch of little kids, you might say, or in their late teens, and maybe not used to limelight. Absolutely not used to limelight.
But limelight was something they'd be experiencing more and more. With North America conquered, Percy Page set his sights on higher goals. He wanted the team to make a trip halfway around the world to play at the Paris Olympics. He'd lobbied for basketball's inclusion as an Olympic sport, but he was unsuccessful. Then, early in 1924, he received a letter saying that an international championship basketball tournament would be held in Paris in conjunction with the Olympic Games.
Well, one night at practice, he said, I want you girls to come to the library after practice. And he said, well, I have been in touch with whoever it was in the government to represent Canada at the Olympic Games in Paris. And he said, we have enough money to take 8 people over. And he had the dates and everything when we, you know, all lined up. Well, for once, we were quiet. You know, we're just stunned. Never even thought of anything like that happening. And then, of course, we were noisy.
A hero's send-off awaited them as they embarked on the European journey. Overseas, the Grads dispatched their opponents with ease. The European teams proved to be no match for the stronger, taller Canadians. The Grads won all of their games and were proclaimed undisputed world champions, a title they held for the next 16 years. They returned home to a welcome which surpassed even their wildest imaginings.
They had built a platform up there, and like the Stanley Cuppers coming back last year, we all had a car with our name on the plastered all over it. And in Edmonton at that time, I don't think there were more than 80,000 people, if that. And 20,000 of them were in that square.
The group of friends who began playing just for fun now basked in international recognition. In 9 short years, the Grads had risen out of obscurity to rule the world of basketball. It was more than just friendships, more than just a team. The Grads were creating a sports dynasty. A powerful bond had been forged, a bond which would last a lifetime.
It must be some kind of chemistry that Mr. Page saw in each girl that came up. Because starting with the first team and then going right through the last, it's always, the faces changed, but the style of play didn't change. And our outlook on life didn't change.
Do you know of another team, any team,
anywhere,
who anywhere, men's, women's, or whatever, who know each other after 2 or 3 years? 2 or 3 years? We've known some of these since we were about 7 or 8 years old. And we have slept three in a bed, showered together, traveled together.
This team, the Edmonton Grads, was formed before some of us were born. But before we got on the team, there was all this tradition and all these players had gone through. Gradually, over the years, as we'd have banquets and so on, while Mr. Page was here, and since he's gone, we've carried it on having our reunions. Well, all of a sudden, we're all one unit again. And that's just a tremendous thing to me.
Ketchup, chow, chow, chow. Eat 'em up, chew 'em up, wow, wow, wow. Hannibals, cannibals, this boom, bah. Commercial graduates, rah, rah, rah. Pickles, ketchup, chow, chow, chow. Chew 'em up, eat 'em up, wow, wow, wow. Hannibals, cannibals, this boom, bah. Commercial graduates, rah, rah, rah.
And we're just about ready for the opening jump. Noel McDonald will face Tulsa's Alberta Williams at center court.
I was just a sub at the time and scared to death. And Mr. Page told me that I had to check with Alberta Williams, who was an all-American, all-star center. He said, try and stop her shooting. Try and get the rebounds at both ends and hold her if you can. And that was my job to stop Alberta Williams.
Passing from the Grads here, Munton to Brown, Brown to Northup. Northup over to McBurney. McBurney takes it. And Malloy is blocking McDonald. McDonald passes to McBurney. McBurney takes it into the key. And it's a beautiful setup. And it's a field basket from McBurney. Good for 2 points.
The team's success and popularity was unparalleled in the male-dominated world of sport. To their fanatic fans who packed the gardens or who tuned into every game on the radio, the Grads could do no wrong.
That was the biggest fear, I think, going into a game, that we might let all our fans down because they were such ardent fans. And nobody's invincible, but I think they used to feel that we were.
And they'd come to all sorts of trouble to get to the games.
I think it was wonderful. And that's why we used to go out in the spring, every spring, and we'd go to some of these smaller towns in appreciation of the fact that they made such an effort to get into the games, and we'd put on an exhibition game.
The Grads had achieved star status, but with that stardom came obligations. Pressure was always on the team, not only to give their best on the basketball court, but also to be on their best behavior every day.
You felt responsibility towards the city because, you know, you were representing the city and you felt that. And in your personal life. And that was one thing that Mr. Page was very insistent on. He never, to my knowledge, said, now, you do this. But his unwritten law was that, in his words, you're a lady first and an athlete second. And you act like a lady at all times.
You know, the kids, they would come along and stand together and admire us with their fingers in their mouths. And I think it had some effect on a lot of children.
I remember I couldn't get down Jasper Avenue without, it'd take me about 2 hours to go from one end down to the other just to go to work.
It was a cute.
Oh, yeah, she was a cutie.
Everywhere they went, the Grads were the center of attention. They were more than just a sports story. Their success continually challenged old beliefs, and the press loved it. Back in their hometown, barely a day went by without news of the team.
Sometimes. If we were playing ball, I guess we're on the sports page. Otherwise, I guess we're on the social page.
We were treated royally, stayed at the better hotels and traveled first class. And it was a wonderful experience. It gave us a taste of life that we wouldn't have had ordinarily.
Another perfect day on the French Riviera. And who should our cameras find lolling in the land of the rich and famous? Why, it's none other than Canada's commercial grads basketball team, enjoying a little rest and relaxation as they travel about Europe in defense of their world championship. Careful, girls.
It was just a wonderful experience. I'll never forget it as long as I live, and I'm getting old now. Once I get my hip done and my knee done, I'll be like a new woman. I hope to get out again, you know.
Grads are now 11 points behind. If my memory serves me correctly, this is the biggest lead that's been ever held over the team. There's less than 2 minutes remaining in the opening half. There goes the gun for halftime. Both teams look weary as they file off the court to their dressing rooms. There has to be great concern in the arena over whether the Grads have the stamina to keep up with this powerful and physical Tulsa team. Pause now for station identification.
By night, they were famous world-class athletes. But by day, they were ordinary working women, glad to have a job during the Depression.
Most of the girls were secretaries, and some of us worked in department stores. And if you were lucky enough to be on the team when they did make a trip, you took your holidays.
Touring on vacations made for grueling schedules. There was no other way. They had to play enough games to finance their trips. On one road trip, they played 10 games in 11 nights. The results were disastrous. The Grads lost 3 in a row, their longest losing streak ever. It was an unbelievable loss for a team so used to winning. But the team took these occasional setbacks in stride. Since the very beginning, their motivation had been love of the sport. And unlike many of their opponents, the Grads received no money for playing. They were proud to uphold the principles of amateurism.
Because we didn't get any money from the government. No federal money was given to us. As a matter of fact, one time we were in San Francisco, and poor Mr. Page, he was quite worried. He wanted us to go out and have a good time, and he gave us each a silver dollar. And he was worried sick about that silver dollar as money given to the girls. But he gave me about $8, you see. But I'm just telling you the truth. He didn't want to get mixed up that it might be taken into professionalism, you see. That's the whole thing.
In spite of the financial difficulties of running a team on a strictly amateur basis, Percy Page was able to organize better and better tours for the team. The Grads traveled regularly across Canada and the U.S. and overseas.
There will be 8 players and myself, with Mrs. Page as chaperone. Stop. Leaving Edmonton July 5. Stop.
An organized and disciplined man in every aspect of life, Percy Page had a flair for promotion and an eye for detail which served the team both on and off the court.
Departing Quebec City.
Mrs. Page told us that he'd sit up till 2 or 3 in the morning, keeping the books straight, and he handled all the exchange from one country to another, you know, handled all our tickets and everything. We didn't do anything. We just went.
Rome and Nice. Stop. That's Nice. Arriving Berlin, August 4th, for Olympic opening ceremonies.
This is where Hitler came in, and we were close enough that we could have just popped him off if we had wanted to.
I often wondered if it was...
Wished afterwards we might have.
If it was he or his double, I don't know, but I think it was him.
There's Noel and Mabel and probably Ed on it.
That's Allan.
That was the tall and the short of the team.
Played center, and then Steve's grabbing a few of them.
That's Noel. Yeah, that's me.
Only 38 women were lucky enough to wear a Grads uniform. Players came and went, but one face remained the same. Percy Page was the Grads' only coach. He devoted himself tirelessly to the team and to the pursuit of excellence and sportsmanship. In 25 years, he never missed a game. Such deep commitment inspired the loyalty and respect of the team.
Mr. Page was a very reserved man. Some people felt he was hard to get to know, but he was a very sentimental man. And I would say rather shy man.
He was a funny man. I can remember we were going down to the States in the train. It was awfully hot. And the twins they had taken the seat down so that they could lie down on the seats this way, and they were in their slips, and they had spread a coat over it. He had his coat draped over, a raincoat over the back. They just took that down and put it across him. He came humming down the aisle, lifted the coat, put it over the thing of the girl. I don't think he even noticed it. If they'd been naked, I don't suppose he would have known. Be careful. Cut that.
There are a couple of areas I'd like you to concentrate on. Now, they may be taller than we are, but they're not as fast. Keep your passing low. Use more bounce passes. Now, we know what's necessary. It's simply a matter of going out and playing our game. I know that if you do that, we will win the day. Try again, Etta. Remember?
He didn't have a method as such. And he didn't try to change any natural abilities. I think it was just that he could get the best out of the players.
Good.
He expected us to win and to do well and to live up to all of his expectations in every way.
Good, Etta. Whoops, Margaret. Two-handed pass, chest high.
The way he taught us was that you learn the fundamentals, you practice your shooting and passing, and we did spend hours practicing passing.
So it was fast passing, fast breaking, and that was Mr. Page's plan, and it worked.
I'd like to try that play again from the tip-off. You know, some people say that these plays are so old they have whiskers on them. But they work, if practiced to perfection. Let's try it again. Now pass on the left.
Oh, he's a perfectionist, firstly. You know, he had very, very high standards in his personal life.
Now bounce pass.
And of course, he was our
Very nice,
teacher,
Margaret.
and he had high standards in that. He never raised his voice. You know, he didn't rant and rave at you on the basketball floor or in the schoolroom. He spoke very precisely, and you knew exactly what you'd done wrong.
Very good. Use both hands equally, right? And don't forget, nice head.
He was very quiet, sitting on the bench. If things were going against us, about all he'd ever do was just you know, if one of us didn't do quite what he thought we should. Well, I loved Mr. Page. He was a coach, almost like a father and a mentor. He was someone I could go to with problems, and he was a gentleman. A lot of coaches now are not gentlemen.
Next. Come on, pick them up again. Let's go.
He tried to instill into us the sportsmanship. Okay, if you lose, be gracious about it. If you win, be more gracious. And as I say, he was a gentleman, and he expected us to be ladies. Off the floor. Play like men on the floor.
There has to be a common denominator. I've tried to figure out some...
I don't know one unselfish girl on the team.
No.
Anywhere.
No. Not one selfish person. That's what made them a good team, because nobody wanted to be a star. This is why it always amazes me that they get an all-star team together. How can they be a team if they're all stars?
Becoming champions was one thing, but Page realized early on that to remain champions, a team needed a steady supply of young, gifted players. So he created a feeder system, a strong network of farm teams which trained young would-be players. And the up-and-comers idolized the Grads, hoping one day to follow in their footsteps.
They were just way up on a pedestal. It was everybody's desire. Every basketball player wanted to make the Grads. Of course, not ever dreaming that we ever would, you know.
We'd spend our noon hours at school, and I'd just stand there and heave them to her, you know, while she'd flip them in. And the girls were really good, you know, because they always talked to the young kids. Made you feel good. Or they would sneak you in the door sometimes to a free game. Like we all had an idol on the team. Yeah. Connie Smith was mine. And when she took that first trip to Europe, you know, she brought things back for me, little gifts.
Oh, we used to hang around and they'd take us in, you know, we wouldn't have to pay. I can remember going out to the arena one night in my uniform, and one little girl said to me, "Would you take me in, Doris?" I said, "Sure." So I took her by the hand, and she was hooked up to about 12 other children. The dormants.
This is why it's standing room only sometimes.
And it's a tremendous evening here at the Gardens. The crowd couldn't ask for more exciting basketball. Tulsa Stenos leading by 3, and the tip-off goes to Edmonton. Well, that's McBurney's third personal foul. One more and she'll be out of the game. What a devastating loss that would be for the home team. Grads have called a timeout with 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining in the game. Fatigue is showing on the players. If the Grads behind by 1, it's going to be a classic finish to a classic matchup.
By the mid-1930s, even as the team enjoyed some of its most classic and exciting games, the end began to come into sight for the first time. Page considered entering politics, and so he contemplated retiring from the team in 1936, but the women coaxed him into staying on. The Second World War clinched the decision. Their home arena, the Gardens, was taken over by the military. With no other place large enough to hold crowds, and with restrictions on travel, the team could no longer support itself. After 25 years, the chain of history was broken.
Thousands of fans packed the Edmonton Gardens to watch as the world champion Edmonton Grads play their final game. The team is disbanding after 25 years and a winning record that is unequaled in the world of sport. They've won over 96% of their games and have held Canadian, North American, and world championships for
They had played over 500 games and had won most of them. They had traveled hundreds of thousands of miles in defense of a world championship they held for 16 consecutive years. Dr. James Naismith, inventor of the game of basketball, called them the finest team ever to step out on a basketball floor. And for anyone lucky enough to see them play, a Grads game was a glorious moment, never to be forgotten.
Just do everything you've been doing all game long. This will turn out fine. Do what you've been taught. Use your reach, use your height, and keep leaning on it. All right, come on now, let's finish it.
That's a foul, and 1-2 red. That's 1-2 red. Blocking.
That's 4 fouls on McBurney. She's out of the game.
Sorry, Mr. Page. Sorry, Mr. Page.